Welcome to the Borealis Experience. I'm your host, Aurora, and I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so happy to be spending a little bit of time with you today. We will be talking about relationships. Yeah. So this is still season 1 where I'm introducing the podcast to you guys. It is about self-improvement, connection to yourself. The better you feel with yourself, the better and stronger you can shine your light and step outside into this world and be a good person. Not to be a good person, but you just feel good about yourself. So in the first episodes, I talked about how the body, the mind, and then your emotions and your environment is influencing your well-being. And today I will be talking about relationships. I feel relationships is life. If you look at it, you were born into this world where gravity took over and all of a sudden you had to breathe air. You were disconnected from your mom. Really, if you look at it, it's a very intense experience that a newborn baby is going through. They come from a place where it's warm and sheltered, where there's no need to cry or beg to get water or food or shelter. Everything is provided right now, right there. And then they are being born into this world, onto this beautiful planet that is so abundant, but all of a sudden they are completely dependent on others. They have to express their needs. They have to set boundaries and really fight for surviving, even though most of us who listen to podcasts or have expensive devices here never had to struggle seriously for life, but some newborns have to struggle a lot and are not provided with everything they need. And if you were provided with everything, then it was still a big traumatic experience. You were thrown into a new world where you had to find your place. So everything from then on is about your relationships. If you didn't have good relationships back then or right now when you're born, then you were lost because they need to provide shelter and food for you because you can't do it on your own. It's not like a baby animal. The human baby is actually way more vulnerable than any mammal on this planet. So the way you relate to your parents, your primary caregivers, is so critical. So how do you relate to your environment? What did you learn from an early age on? In my previous podcast, I said that from age 0, from conception, until approximately year 7, your brain is like a little sponge that downloads everything in her or his environment without really questioning. They just copy and paste and go about their lives and try to fit in. And this trying to fit in is really a huge thing, because as soon as you don't fit in, as soon as you do something that your parents dislike, you are being exposed to a threat, and that is being excluded from the community. And now as an adult, you may be in your 30s, your 40s, your 20s, doesn't matter, you're independent now. But as a child, this is an extreme fear and discomfort that every child is aware of. So now you can maybe see already that it is so crazy how much influence our parents have at that age, because we will do practically, basically, literally everything to stay connected to our source of love and warmth, food and shelter. And it is not out of mean will that some parents are not giving us what we need. When it was the case, it was certainly that they were incapable. They behaved from their best interest, or to say it better, my English is getting worse and worse now, I feel. They acted from their best self back then. Yeah, they didn't wake up in the morning and say, oh, today I'm going to be a shitty parent. They were overwhelmed with having the time to be there for you, having the job, having the money, it doesn't matter. Like, every parent has something that you can reproach, so to say. And we will dive into that a little later on. But if you look at it today, I want to just make very clear to you of how dependent you were as a child and what you had to go through, maybe, or you just downloaded and didn't question, and it might not serve you anymore. So the way our parents relate to each other, for instance, is how we see is natural and healthy in primary relationships, like love and romantic relationships. Now, look at people who went through emotional abuse with their parents, or physical abuse, or constantly felt like their sibling is doing better than they are doing, or constantly feeling they're not enough. Then what does it do with your brain, with your confidence, with your health, your overall health? It makes you feel as if that is the norm, and as if that, if you find that now when you step out into the world, is your perfect match, because this is what you know, this is what you grew up with. And then you can go further. You can reflect about, so how you related to your parents, and how did they relate to people outside the family? How did they relate to friends? And so on and so on. And what did you learn? What did you learn is normal? And is it really the best for you? Is it serving you to the best of its ability? And yeah, then let's go back to you. What kind of family member are you? What kind of friend or partner are you? How do you see people? Do you like spending time with people, or are you more of a loner? How do you relate to your co-workers? Most of the time we spend more time with our co-workers than with our family members. How, and this is a very interesting part of relationships, how do you relate to authority figures? Those are such interesting questions, I think, to ask yourself, and to just, next time you go for a walk, next time you drive, think about, like, go through your closest relationships, your partner, your friends, your co-workers, your boss, and really think out of a bird's perspective how you behave, what kind of person you are. I think you probably all heard about the takers and the givers. There's always people who love to give and people who love to take. And I see people's energy, so bear with me. Don't don't run away right away, because it sounds too esoteric, but it's very simple. I see how some people suck energy out of me and some people add energy to me, good energy or bad energy, and I always kind of navigate through people and feel more drawn to some people and not so much to others. And maybe you can notice that in your daily life now too. Who are you drawn to? Who are you attracted to? Romantic relationships is another huge topic that I want to address later on today. We just touch base on it very superficially. Then how do you listen? Do you listen really to the person who's in front of you? Or do you subconsciously try to put your perception onto their kind of personality? Like you see them how you want to see them. You don't really allow them to be how they really are, because it doesn't fit your concept of a good person, what you learned. How do you express your needs? And this is really also very fascinating, because I noticed ever since I observe it in people how extremely different people express their needs and what they want. And it can be very trivial things with major drama and intensity, because people back then, when they grew up, had to fight for attention, had to fight to be seen by their parents, because the other sibling was the A student, was the awesome person in the family, and you always felt like the black sheep. So now in relationships, that person will also feel the need to either be with a person who doesn't give them the attention, to then show those tools of expression, manipulation, or they will feel totally lost with a person who actually meets their needs, because they've never really had their needs met. And then how do you set boundaries? It is crazy interesting. You see, I'm getting really revved up now. It is crazy interesting to see how early children are developing a character, and how some parents just can't stand it because it's not convenient, because it just doesn't fit in their model of how they want their child to be, and they don't see that a child is a totally different person. It is, made of you and your partner, but it might grow into a totally different direction than you are, and that is totally fine, because if you allow it, then it's going to be successful in that direction it wants to grow. So very early on, you can see, when you observe young parents, if it is okay for them that the child sets boundaries, and it can be silly boundaries, like, I don't want to kiss Aunt Catherine on her cheek when she says hi, I just want to shake her hand. And I don't like broccoli, or I don't want to go to bed at 7 o'clock. It is also very tricky for the parents, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to blame young parents now. Like, there has to be boundaries. But I think it's a very fine line where you allow a character to blossom, and where you give gentle guidance, because it's really the best for their physical health and mental health. So going to bed early and eating an early supper, and when the child doesn't want to obey, then you just tell them what the consequences are, and that it's really good for them. But when it comes to let's go back to the example, greeting Aunt Catherine onto her